Hello, I'm Dr. Eben Alexander, and I am good evening. Finally, getting the technical things out of the way. I'm Eben Alexander, MD, a neurosurgeon, pioneer in consciousness research, and author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Proof of Heaven, book Map of Heaven, and also co-author of Living in a Mindful Universe. It's an honor to welcome you to this global event tonight. Having personally witnessed a profound near-death experience during a week in coma from bacterial meningitis, I've had to reassess everything that I thought I knew about the nature of reality. This includes a complete reworking of my understanding of the nature of God. We're here to explore a new book, God, the Science, the Evidence, already a bestseller in globally, US, UK, Australia, and Europe. Tonight, you're going to hear directly from the authors, Michel-Yves Bolloré and Olivier Bonnassies, as they share a powerful question. Does the latest scientific evidence point to the existence of God? This isn't a sermon. It's an evidence-based inquiry, and this is an interactive session. We welcome your questions, reflections, and input via the live chat and polls. Tonight, you are the journey. Before we begin, I'd like a quick look at the book that brings us together tonight. God, the Science, the Evidence has become a publishing phenomenon. Over 400,000 copies sold across Europe, sparking wide public debate. Now, with its English release, it's already a #1 bestseller in the US, UK, Australia, and Canada, opening a global conversation about one extraordinary question. Does modern science point toward the existence of God? The book is accessible to all and explores discoveries across cosmology, physics, and biology, and suggests that the latest science may, in fact, offer the strongest case yet for a creator. The authors, Michel-Yves Bolloré and Olivier Bonnassies. Michel-Yves is an engineer and entrepreneur whose career in industrial innovation and education eventually led him to investigate the deep dialogue between science and faith. Now, Olivier is an author and media entrepreneur whose work lives at the crossroads of reason, science, and belief. Tonight, we're fortunate to have both authors with us to explore these discoveries and what they mean, not just for science, but for all of us who think about existence itself. Gentlemen, welcome. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you very much, Eben.
Welcome
Ah,
all.
thank God I can hear you.
Yes, it works.
All
It
right,
works.
things are working. Well, thank you all so much for being here tonight. And so let's get going with this discussion. Entropy, thermodynamics, and the end of time. These are very interesting facets to start our discussion. Let's start at the very beginning with the question of how the universe itself came to be. What does the second law of thermodynamics really say about the fate and the origin of the universe?
Thermodynamics is a very important discovery which happened at the end of the 19th century. It's not as well known as the Big Bang, though it is as important as the expansion of the universe. This science was discovered by three scientists, Carnot, Clausius, and Boltzmann. And what it says is very simple. It's very revolutionary, which is that everything wears out. Everything will die. All the disorder in always growing. This is what it's called the entropy. And it has some consequences which are very important. It means that our universe, which exists, and that many thought to be eternal for the future, have an end, which is a thermal death. And for example, our sun, unfortunately, will end and will die in 5 billion years. After the sun, all the other stars in the universe will also come to an end. And our universe, in a very long time, but it doesn't matter how long it is, a very long time, the universe will be dark, very cold, and almost empty, very low density. So there are two consequences on the origin of time. The first consequence is that everything which dies, everything which end has necessarily a beginning. It's very clear. It's like in your chimney, if there is a fire, you know that the fire is going to die at a moment. And if it is going to die, it has necessarily a beginning. Someone has been there to start the fire, because if not, it would have been stopped and finished since a very long time. So that's the first consequence, which is obvious. The second consequence is that if the disorder is going to grow in the direction of the future, if at the opposite we are looking backward to the past, it means if we are going into the past, that the order will grow. And if the order grows, there is a limit to the order. There is also necessarily a beginning. So what is extraordinary with thermodynamics is that it is bringing different evidence, that there will be an end, and that this end means that there is a beginning.
Very interesting points. Well, I think from that, we can certainly move into the next major related question. That has to do with the origin and Big Bang inflationary cosmology. The Big Bang is often misunderstood. What does it actually say about our origin and what came before it?
Yes, we can say a lot about the Big Bang. We can say that most of the time science can be complicated, but sometimes its conclusions are very simple. And that's certainly the case here, because I believe that even a child could understand it. There are two key facts that lead to very strong conclusions. The first one is that we are in what we call a space-time, where time, space, and matter are inextricably linked, as Einstein demonstrated. And the second point is that all this had an absolute beginning. It's not only the Big Bang who said this. Michel-Yves said that thermodynamics conclude the same thing, but 7 different rational approaches infer this: rationality, physics, mathematics, cosmology, the impossibility of cyclic universes, and thermodynamics and the theory of the Big Bang. An infinite amount of time in the past is not possible, so there is an absolute beginning. And what is the conclusion? What can we deduce from this? It's very simple. If time, space, and matter all began at the same time, it's logical to conclude that the cause at the origin of this emergence is necessarily of a different sort. In other words, this cause must be non-spatial, non-temporal, and non-material. And it has the power to create and adjust everything so that we can be there. Georges Lemaître, who was a physicist and a Catholic priest, was the first to imagine a primitive atom from which everything originates. And he immediately understood that it's not only the beginning of time and matter, it's the beginning of space. As soon as you have space, you have time and matter. But the beginning of space is something completely crazy. What you have around you right now did not always exist. It had a beginning, and this beginning of space has immense implications. So that's how, with a very simple argument throughout science, we approach the basic definition of God, that is that of a philosophy of religion, that is to say, a transcendent being outside the universe who created and adjusted everything so that humanity and all life could one day come into being. In summary, if there is a beginning, there is a God. And that's the reason why the discovery of the Big Bang was a bombshell. In the past, all atheist philosophers or scientists always imagined that matter was somehow eternal in the past in one way or another, and that the universe never began. But in 1927, Alexander Friedman worked on Einstein equations, and he was the first to discover the expansion of the universe and to say that there is a beginning. But it was in Russia, in a communist atheist regime, and all his disciples were persecuted. We have a very original chapter on this. All the disciples of Friedman were persecuted by the Russians and also by the Nazis, because they said that there is a beginning, and the beginning is something impossible for when you have an atheist vision.
Very, very interesting. And that kind of leads us right into the next major issue you all bring up in the book concerning the laws of physics. Many scientists would say the universe is uncannily suited for life. just how precise are the conditions that make life possible?
Yes, Eben, we met together for the first time a few weeks ago in Princeton, where we had in the amphitheater where Einstein was teaching. And in this place, a little girl named Phyllis Wright one day managed to pass to Einstein a letter with this question: do scientists pray? And about 10 days later, she received from him a letter, which is now famous in the whole world. He wrote in German: everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that some spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, one that is vastly superior to that of man. That was a very powerful idea, an idea that Einstein was the first to express several decades before scientists began to discover in the last 70 years that the universe is extraordinarily fine-tuned in all its parameters. We are speaking of the initial data of the universe, of the value and ratio of the four forces of the universe, and the laws of quantum mechanics, physics, chemistry, biology. All this is incredibly adjusted and calibrated. In the book, we are describing a lot of examples: the precision of the initial expansion rate of the universe, the density, homogeneity, and anisotropy of the universe, the cosmological constant, the mass of the quark, the difference between the mass of the proton and the neutron, the ratio between the electromagnetic force and the gravity, a lot of things. We cannot describe everything now, but what we can say is that this fine-tuning requires an explanation. Because, for example, if you roll the dice 100 times in a row and get a double six every time, that's something unusual, that's specific. And you would have to ask yourself some questions. If you organize a lottery among all the inhabitants of the planet, and if someone wins every week, the police will come and say to him, you are cheating. And if he answers, no, I'm just lucky, it will not work. The police will say, we need another explanation. So that's exactly the case for us. We win on the lottery 30 times only in physics and cosmology. So we have to have an explanation, and we can say today that by chance we had talks with top scientists, with Nobel Prize winners, with many people in Princeton, in Berkeley, and in other places, and they agree that the hypothesis of God is a solution. But they say if we take as scientists that solution, we stop working. But in fact, for the moment, there is no alternative. There is no credible alternative.
Very, very interesting. And that really leads us into the kind of precision that we also find in the phenomenon life on Earth.
Yes.
So the precision is present not just in the physical parameters that allow us to have stars and planets, but in life itself, written into the very code of DNA. We know that DNA carries information, but where did that system of information recording and processing come from?
That's also very interesting. What we have just said is that there has been three big shocks to materialism during the 20th century. The first shock has been the thermodynamics discovery, we just told about. And then after, the second one is the expansion of the universe with the Big Bang. And the third one, which Olivier just mentioned, is the fine-tuning of the universe, which is something really fantastic. And even some scientists who were atheists or materialists, like Fred Hoyle, the end of their lives, they have changed and they have recognized that God existed, because the fine-tuning is so fantastic that there is no other plausible materialistic explanation for that. But the fourth shock, if I may say, there have been four shocks to the materialism, is the story of the apparition of light from inert matter. Darwin, the theory of Darwin in 1870 was to say that life appeared in a small pound of hot water at the foot of a volcano. There were thunder, There were storm and rain and agitation. All that was shaken, and the first cell came out of this pound of water. And everybody thought that, and they kept this, if I may say, this theory. And in the 1950s, in the United States, there were 6 laboratories working on what was called at that time primordial soup, primitive soup. Miller is very well known for that. He had a big laboratory in the 1950s in Chicago. And all these laboratories have closed down in the beginning of the 1960s. What happened? What happened is just fantastic, is that some American scientists, mainly in 1957, I think, they have discovered DNA and then RNA and then ribosome. In fact, what is it? It is that in the smallest cell, bacteria, whatever, very, very small, inside we have computer, we have language like in the software, and there is a lot of information. Just to give a figure, the density of information in a small cell is several billion times more dense than in your iPhone. Just to give you an idea of the complexity. When scientists have understood that a cell is extremely complex, looks like, much more complex than probably a commercial plane taking off. Then they stop to have the idea to believe that it could come from a pound. So now there is no more really a theory, how life has appeared. We believe, of course, that life appeared from inert matter, but this is probably thanks to another layer of fine-tuning that we ignore today, that we probably will discover one day, but which is so fantastic that it is another, and it is a force, another evidence for the necessity of a creator who have made it.
Very, very interesting. I'd like to shift now and ask you both a few open questions here that either one of you can feel free to answer, or both of you. What discovery most changed your own perspective in terms of the existence of God?
Well, answer to this question, I will say that it's, but it's not one discovery which has changed my mind. It is a fact which is extraordinary that during the same century, the 20th century, we have mentioned several evidence, several discoveries which are independent, which means that they are coming from different fields of knowledge. So this evidence, they are independent, they are converging, and they are all going into the same direction. This is, I would say, the big surprise of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century.
Yes, I can say that in this book, we have a very interesting chapter where we gather quotes from 100 top scientists, including 63 Nobel Prize winners. And we can observe that some of these scientists, often they are agnostic or atheist, they spontaneously talk about God, miracles, astonishing coincidences when they are describing the incredible settings and complexity that allows us to exist. Nobody puts a gun on their head, forcing them to talk about God, miracles, or coincidences like this. They did it because they could not do otherwise. And as Michel-Yves said a few minutes ago, Fred Hoyle was a typical case because he was a pure atheist when he fought against Georges Lemaitre at the beginning. He said he tried to imagine something different from the Big Bang because he was an atheist, and he coined the term Big Bang in order to mock the concept. But yet he converted later, becoming a believer, because he discovered that the triple alpha reaction that enables carbon synthesis in stars will be impossible without an excited state of carbon at a very precise energy level, unknown at that time. And this energy level is very precise at this value because of a whole series of very finely tuned parameters. For example, if you change the mass of the quarks by 101%, everything cannot work. So you cannot have carbon in stars. And if you don't have carbon, you don't have life anyway. So Fred Hoyle was very surprised, and he concluded that it's for him very clear that a super intellect deliberately designed the laws of nuclear physics in order that we can be there. So confirmations like this, we had a lot. And I can tell you something else. I'm very impressed of the weakness of all the alternatives that people try, even the greatest scientists like Stephen Hawking, for example. At the end, he said, to explain the beginning, he said, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. But in this sentence, there is two logical mistakes. The first one is that if there is a law such as gravity, it's not nothing, it's something. And the other point is that creating itself, the universe can create itself. Creating yourself is not possible because you need to precede yourself in order to create yourself. So our friend John Lennox said, nonsense remains nonsense, even when taught by world-famous scientists. So
Absolutely.
it's very impressive.
Very good points. Now, in this discussion of the fine tuning, one often encounters the concept of a multiverse. Could you both comment on that?
Yes, we can say that scientists imagine multiverse in order to answer the question of the fine tuning, because it does not answer at all the question of the beginning. But so they imagine that if we have such an incredible settings of laws and parameters in our universe, it's perhaps because there is a lottery of an immense lottery, perhaps. But there is four problems. The first one is that this hypothesis is 100% speculative and unfalsifiable. So it's out of science, in fact. Second, it has difficulty explaining the beauty and harmony that is present everywhere in our universe. The beauty is not normal, it's something rare, something that is additional and improbable because it depends on proportions, harmony, golden ratio, something like this. So you can imagine a universe that works, but is absolutely no beauty. And it's not the case. Third, to be coherent with the extreme improbability implied by the fine-tuning, we would have to postulate truly a staggering numbers of universes. For example, something like 10 to the power of 500 sterile universes in physics for one that works like ours, and even a more colossal figure in biology. But if you have to count to 1 billion, saying one number every second, night and day, you will have to take more than 2 billion times the age of the universe. And this is only 10 to the power of 27. So just imagine what is 10 to the power of 500. It's a crazy number. And if you are an atheist, if you want to keep an atheist explanation of the fine-tuning, you need to believe that there is somewhere such an enormous number of completely sterile universes somewhere. So is it reasonable? Not sure. But the last but not least point is that there is an even more important problem, because the natural process or machine, if you prefer, that create universes like this must choose the various parameters that define universes by targeting very specific windows that includes viable solutions within very narrow ranges. So this machine must itself be very fine-tuned. But then who tuned this machine? That's why Stephen Hawking declared that the multiverse theory was dead. And in the end, we have many people asking the following question: is the multiverse really an explanation or a desperate answer?
It sounds like a desperate answer.
Yes, it's look like. It look like.
Okay, well, this question comes from Laura in the chat. What if consciousness, source, or God created this Big Bang, meaning that God is indeed eternal, and there are also other Big Bangs and other dimensions created by this vast consciousness of love?
It's absolutely possible that there is many Big Bang before the Big Bang. It's not a lot, because at the end, if you have 7, 8, or 10 cyclic universes with Big Bang and Big Crunch following each other, at the end you will have 4 problems. The first one is that you will have a lot of black holes. The cosmological constant will dominate at the end. You will have irregularities. At the end, the universe will not be homogeneous and isotropic as it is. It will be like a cigar. And you will have another point, I don't remember. But so the idea of cyclical universes does not work. You can have perhaps 1 or 2, but not a lot, and absolutely not an infinity. Because if you are an atheist, you need to imagine that there is an infinity of Big Bang and Big Crunch in the past with an infinite amount of time. That's not possible really today with the modern science.
Okay, very good. And now a question coming from Jimber in the audience. Atheists often argue that the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy cannot be created or destroyed, implies the universe is eternal and therefore not created. This is why they often mention the possibility of a bouncing universe theory. How can you respond to that objection?
We think it's...
Yes.
Tu veux répondre?
Vas-y, vas-y.
Vas-y.
No, we can say, we just said that cyclical universes are not possible, because you can have 3, 4, 5, perhaps 10 bounces, but not more, to have a universe like ours now. And the hypothesis of an infinite amount of time in the past suppose that there is an infinite amount of Big Bang and Big Crunch in the past. So it's absolutely not possible at all.
In fact, we can add to Olivier says, we can add that 3 American scientists very recently have made a major discoveries. It was in 2003.
Yes.
Guttbord and Vilenkin. And their law is that it is impossible to have an infinite series of Big Bang before our Big Bang. So it's not possible now, scientifically, to have an infinite series of Big Bang. It's not possible. So this is not possible.
Okay. Can probability ever equal proof?
Alors, the question of the probability and the proof, it's very important to know that there are 2 kinds of proof. There are absolute proof, which are like we know in mathematics, and the absolute proof are convincing everybody. They are forever. They are everywhere in the world. For example, if you take the demonstration of Pythagoras for his theorem, everybody agree on the triangle rectangle with the square of the hypotenuse, which is equal to the square of the 2 other sides. But this is an absolute demonstration. And in the real world, it's very interesting to know that absolute proof do not exist in the world. We have only relative proof. So what science has been bringing to us during the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century are not absolute proof of the existence of God, but relative proof. However, when we have in our mind, we have a scale, and on the 2 sides, and on one side, you have many evidence which are piling up, and this evidence are independent. It's a little bit like in a court, with a prosecutor who is bringing many evidence, then the jury is us. We can decide and have a confidence, a certitude which is beyond, all reasonable doubt. So yes, there is no absolute proof for the existence of God, but there are many different independent evidence. That's the point.
Very good. What would you say is next for this conversation?
For me, I would like to say that we are not journalists, we are scientists, but we tried to do a work of investigation because we discussed and interact with a lot of top scientists and top specialists in many fields, and they review our chapters. Our goal is that by the end of the reading of this book, you will have in hand all the information necessary to decide what seems most reasonable for you to believe on one very limited question: is there a creator God or not? And we are using only one compass, only one angle: rationality. And we are examining 12 different fields of knowledge. And at the end, the public, the reader, is the jury of this investigation. And many people, when they see a book like this, very thick, and about modern science, they are afraid. They say it's not for me. But it's absolutely not the case, because it has been written especially for ordinary people like you and me. And the main reason of the success of this book is that it's very accurate and up to date. It's a comprehensive overview of the case, but accurate and up to date, but yet very easy to read and very accessible. And it's not a book that you read from the first page to the last page. Its chapters are independent and you can read them in any order. And for example, you can consult the very clear and detailed table of content, select a specific topic, and read just 10 or 20 pages to get a good understanding of one issue. And 2 weeks after, you will do something else. So for me, it's very important to look again at this very important issue. It's one of the most important issues of our lives, the question of the existence of God. And we all seek happiness. But how to find it? Everyone has his own worldview, but where is the right one? You cannot have the right one and go in the right direction and avoid wrong directions if you don't address first this question of the existence of God. And it's very strange for me that this question is not much more talked in the public debate, but today it's being framed in totally new terms. And what we are saying with this book is, please have a look at this, because you can be very surprised. You know, when I was young, I was not a believer at all. And I had the surprise to discover that there is a lot of very strong, rational, independent, and very convincing reasons to believe in God. And I think that the people who will read this book will have perhaps the same surprise.
Well, I agree. I think it's very well written for the lay reader. It's definitely appeals just not just to the scientific mind. So we're seeing more questions coming in through the chat. So people continue to ask, and we'll do our best to address them. And thank you to Carlos for this question. How would you answer scientists like Sean Carroll, who say that the Big Bang is just the beginning of classical space-time, where something quantum and eternal could have pre-existed it?
It's very interesting because we had talks, as we said, with Nobel Prize winners in Berkeley and Princeton. And we also co-produced 4 documentaries with 10 Nobel Prize winners and 25 top scientists. And we published this book 4 years ago. So we had a lot of talks like this. And when we are saying to the people, how can you explain, for example, the beginning of the universe to top scientists? They said, for the moment, we have nothing. Because, of course, God is an hypothesis. It can work. But we cannot, as scientists, take this option. We have to look at something else. But for the moment, we have nothing. And I was joking and answering them, you will have nothing forever, because if there is a beginning of time, space, and matter that began together, the cause at the origin of this emergence is now and forever of a different sort. It will never change. So for me, a quantum fluctuation at the beginning of the universe does not work, because to have a quantum fluctuation, you need to have space already. So it's not the beginning, because the real beginning, as we said, George Lemaitre saw this immediately, the real beginning is the beginning of space. And when you have the beginning of space, as soon as you have space, you have time and matter. So just imagine that if space began, the cause should be different. So for me, I'm very surprised of a lot of hypotheses that are absolutely not the beginning, that are speaking of something else. Of course, in space, time, and matter, you can have a lot of events, but if there is an absolute beginning, you have to, in our book, we have this chapter with 100 citations from top scientists. And the first one is Alexander Vilenkin, we say he is an atheist. And we interview him, one of the last interviews, because after he had a problem in the brain. And he said, with the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. And that's the problem for the moment. You have absolutely no credible alternative. When people say that the universe will create itself from nothing, it's crazy. You see, from if nothing exists, nothing will come.
Right. Very good points. So our next question comes from the audience, from the chat, from Jim. How does the phenomenon of probability or uncertainty, as found in quantum mechanics, relate to the high specificity in cosmology and nature? Does it support or confound this position of exactness as a reason for universal intelligence?
We can say that the quantum mechanics is a very strange world, it's sure, but at the end, it's something that speaks about God also, because, for example, comment on dit l'intrication, intrication, je me rappelle. I will say you. In entanglement, make the proof that there is another level of reality outside space of time, because the experience of entanglement shows that two particles at something like 15 meters of distance, they interact with no time. So it means that there are only one system in another level of reality. So quantum mechanics, we have a friend that wrote a book about this. Quantum mechanics also points to God, saying that there is necessarily another level of reality behind time, space, and matter.
Right. I think entanglement is absolutely a kind of a mental field. It's a field of information connection outside of four-dimensional space-time.
And you will like this, because with consciousness, you can have open doors for you.
Well, absolutely. Well, I think that's one of the keys of quantum mechanics, is it has to do with the importance of mind in the universe at large, not simply as some derivative from physical matter.
No. I think the importance of mind in science will be in the future a large field of discoveries. Sure.
I agree. Any other comments, Michel, or?
I think that's just to end after what Olivier said. Yes, it's worthwhile to take some time to reflect on the question of the existence of God, because it's a very important question. The same question to know, are we just particles nicely arranged, very cleverly arranged by chance and necessity, which means in fact that we are nothing, because when we die, these particles will go away and be something else. Or are we something else? So are we or are we not? So the question of the existence of God is very important. What is new that now we have very serious evidence, very simple to understand. We have many evidence which can convince everybody that the probability of a creator God is infinitely bigger than otherwise. So materialism, which is a belief, it has always been a belief, But materialism, as in our opinion, has become a very hard belief to keep, perhaps even an irrational belief.
Yes, I totally agree because we are speaking there of one of the most important questions of our lives. We have, as we said, we published this book 4 years ago, and we had more than 150 conferences and debates. And sometimes people say, okay, God exists or not, but it's changed nothing. It's absolutely false, because if God does not exist, we are just clusters of cells in a particular configuration of atoms brought together by chance, by forces of physics and chemistry. And in 100,000 years, nothing will remain of us. And if God does not exist, there is no such things like as good or evil or natural law. Everything is permitted, like as Dostoevsky, Sartre, or Dawkins said. And there is no purpose, no future, no eternal life, nothing remains. It's a very dark vision. Perhaps it's the reality, but it's dark. And if God exists, it's the contrary, because there is someone who wanted us there. There is good and evil. There is a purpose. There is a future. There is an eternity outside time, space, and matter. And all what we can build in eternity has infinite value compared to everything that happens on earth. So the two visions change everything. It's a completely different world. So it's very strange and curious that we don't talk more about this key issue, that it's not more present in the public debate. Perhaps because many people think that this question is indeterminate, unanswerable, undecidable. But it's not true. Our conclusion, it's not only us. Classical philosophy or classical religion said that the same. But we agree on this, and it's the conclusion of our investigation. In fact, there is two conclusions in our investigation. The first one is that there is a remarkable convergence of evidence, not only in science, but also in philosophy, morality, history, in some of the great enigmas that we point in our book. All this converge for us. It's very, very strong. And there is another point, what we call, of course, we are speaking a lot of science, what we call the great reversal of science. Because science, for 4 centuries, seems to be able to explain the world without the hypothesis of God. And from Copernicus to Freud, with Galileo, Laplace, Darwin, and many people, they answer a lot of questions without the hypothesis of God. And we imagine that they can answer all the questions, and it will continue like this. But in fact, something changed with a series of scientific revolutions, as we said, thermodynamics, quantum mechanics, relativity, the discovery of the expansion of the universe, the discovery of complexity in biology, and all the fine-tunings. And this changed totally the picture. And the public remains largely unaware of this. That's why we have to have a new look on this very important question, because I think that the people will be very surprised at what they can read in this investigation.
I agree, and that's one of the reasons I love this work that you all have done, this beautiful book. Now, we do have time for one more question. We'd love to answer the others, and if you follow God, the Science, the Evidence on social media, we will work to answer more of the Q&A's questions there. Now, this final question comes to us from John. Now, what does God expect from us now that we know we are created? How should we live our life to fulfill the purpose for why He created us? Our physical life is temporary. We will come closer to God when our body dies. Our spirit self will live on. For me, the answer is, as a scientist who's had a near death experience and come into a very close connection with that God force, as many near death experiencers do, it's clear that this is the most important work any of us can be doing, and also a great source of relief and reassurance to find that this God force exists. And from the NDE perspective, is a personal God that responds to kind of our desires and wishes. So how would you all answer that particular question?
Well, in fact, our book, Eben, is a book mostly about the existence of a creator God. So we want to answer to the question of the philosopher during the 18th century. Our universe is a wonderful clock and fantastic, finely tuned. Does this clock, there is a clockmaker behind or not? That's the question. And our book is presenting to the public, to the general public, all the evidence, not only in science, but also in other fields, that today, with a very almost certitude, we can say that there is a God behind, a clockmaker behind the clock. The question of we have is not a question of the existence of God. It is a question of what would be the reason for God to create us. It's a question of revelation. It's a question of faith. Our book is not a book of faith and religion. So in principle, in general, we don't answer to this type of question because we want to stay aside because of this. We want to keep just on rational and say, is there a creator God or not?
Mhm.
What I would say is, of course, the next step, it would be next book after, but in that case, I warmly recommend to this question to see for other book. What we know is more or less all. We know the Christian answer question, which is that God being love uh, wants to have more friends and children with him. Well, but that's the Christians. There are other answers from other religions.
Yes, in fact, as Michel-Yves said, our investigation is limited to a very precise and limited question. It's like when you see footsteps in the sand. When you see footsteps in the sand, you can say that you can make the proof of the existence of a cause of something, but you cannot say anything about its nature, about its essence. So, if you want to understand who is the guy who make those footsteps in the sand, you need another investigation. And for us, it's exactly the same. We answer to the question: is there a God? And we think that our point of view is that as Michel-Yves said, the materialist vision of the world is irrational today. That's the first point. And after this, you have another investigation to do, but it's not in our book. Please have a look, but because you can find also very interesting things, but it's not in our book. And this investigation can, if you look at classical philosophy or religion, they said that there is answers also, but it's not in our book.
Right. And I would also add that in answer to John, that certainly prayer and meditation are excellent ways for people to connect with that God force, because it's all through that kind of mental spiritual realm. And near-death experiences, in many ways, I'd love to see you all build that into a future version of this book, because from my perspective, near-death experiences in many ways are the tip of the spear in helping us come to a personal understanding of a relationship with God that's really kind of above and beyond various religious ideologies. Um, so,
Yes,
thank you.
we totally agree, and we can say that your speech in Princeton was very appreciated by everybody.
Well, thank you so much. It was an honor for me to be with you all there presenting in the Einstein room of all places, because I've
Yes.
always honored Einstein as one of the great thinkers. So thank you all for these very thoughtful questions and answers. As we close, what I'd love to hear is what each of you hopes people take away from this dialogue between science and faith.
I think that our goal for Olivier and I is that in many Western countries, the number of believers, the faith has declined very much. So there is more people who have questioned about the existence of God. In fact, there is more hunger. People have a hunger to have answers to this question, because families are divided today. Families are divided. In most family, you have some people who believe in God and some people who believe only in matter. So there is some anxiety, and what we really want is that people can find in only one volume, only one book, easy to understand, all what science and reason can say today about the existence of God. Then after, at the end, they will have to decide if all this evidence are convincing enough, and if they want to have in mind this and to decide for what they are going to choose themselves. This is really our goal, I think.
Yes, we can say that for me, there is an incredible paradox because you have a very important question, you have a lot of evidence, and nobody knows this, and nobody talks about this. So it's incredible. It's a very curious world. So we think that we need a debate on this, and that's the reason why we hope people will read this book and interact with us. And that's what we did in Europe, and we hope to do this also in the US.
Well, it certainly opens up a very promising conversation with the world at large. I think many people are hungry for this and admire the work that you all have done to make the scientific case for the reality of a creator God. The growing scientific support of the existence of a creator God also comes bundled with much evidence that our consciousness is shared with others and the God mind of the universe at large. The evidence suggests we are connected in richly spiritual ways that imply a responsibility to care for each other. As the false sense of separation that's inherent in conventional materialist thought fades away, and the deep truths of your book and further investigations into the reality of God for individual humans start to add together, we can find pathways forward that offer much more optimism and hope for the future. And I would say that this book and its discussion in the public domain provide an invitation to open up to a welcoming and united humanity and the one mind that we all share.
Yes.
Thank you, Eben.
God can hear you.
Well, if tonight's conversation has opened your mind, people, the book deepens it. You can order God, the Science, the Evidence now. The link is, I think, somewhere on this page, or we'll provide that. And also be sure to follow the book on social media for ongoing dialogues and answers to any residual questions. So thank you all for being here tonight. Olivier and Michel, congratulations on a fantastic, world-changing book that I think will be very welcome to many people on this earth. And thank you to the audience for attending tonight. And continue to be part of this community, and it can grow. And I think all of us can contribute to a much brighter and more prosperous and hopeful world through the reality of God in our lives.
Thank you very much, Eben.
Thank you, Eben. Thank you. And thank you all.
Thank you for the endorsement that you did in the past. You know, we had endorsement of many people, but Eben had made something marvelous because he showed us that he read really the book from the beginning to the end. So it was fantastic.
Well, I loved every word. It was very richly well written and a beautiful kind of and well-spoken case to make. So thank you all both for doing that. I think it's a tremendous gift to the world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.